This is one of the best looking and most unique PC cases you can get, but it takes quite a bit of work to get set up because it just ships in a box full of parts. You have to do all the assembly yourself, and with the not so great instructions that it comes with, it feels more like putting together a piece of bad furniture than a PC case. So to start things off, I'm going to take you through what I did to get it set up, and hopefully that'll save you some time down the road if you're going to be getting one of these. And as we go through the process, I'll talk about the build quality, features, and specs, and then I'll show you how I threw all my hardware in there as well. So this design is basically just a metal frame that everything attaches to. That's really all it is. The back panel attaches with 6 thumb screws, and when you remove it, you can see there's a magnetic dust filter in there. It's just the mesh type, and it fits over the ventilation holes on that panel so that there's a bit of protection there if you have any fans or a radiator mounted in that spot. The first thing we need to do is install these big steel posts. There's 4 of them, and they go into each one of the corners on the frame. They just attach with a single screw through the back side. These are what's going to hold the tempered glass panel on there, and also the stand or the base or whatever you want to call it. The stand is all plastic, unlike the rest of the case, which is all metal. Seems to be solid though, so I don't really think it matters too much. It slides over the bottom 2 posts and gets screwed down to the frame. This stand is one of the biggest differences between the Pro and the regular Core P3 models. It seems like a more practical design. It's got some hooks to hold the glass panel, and I find that makes it a lot easier and safer to install and remove it. The only downside is those hooks don't really look all that great. I think they could have used a better looking finish, especially in a high visible area like this. Next up, I got the power supply hanger installed. And this one's for, I'll call it normal or horizontal mounting. There's a separate bracket for vertical or flat mounting, but that takes up a lot of space on the frame, and it limits you to micro ATX or ITX motherboards. When you get to mounting your PSU, there's another bracket here that you attach to the back of the unit, and then that gets screwed down to the frame, and the hanger that we just installed supports the front of the unit. This system lets you mount PSUs up to 200 millimeters in length. This tray is for vertical GPU mounting. You can totally go for a traditional horizontal mount, but vertical is one of the main features of the Core series, and I like how it looks, so I'm going for that. Quick note about that though, if you are going with the vertical setup, the case does not come with a PCIe riser cable. You're gonna need to get your own. The PCI expansion module has 8 slots and they all have thumb screws, and this thing just screws down to both the frame and that GPU tray. Then there's a little column here that connects the tray to the PSU hanger below, just to add a little extra support and rigidness to the system. This little piece mounts your PCIe riser cable to the GPU tray. There's 2 standoffs where you attach the cable, and then this thing screws right down to the tray itself. I'm not going to install this yet because I'm going to deal with that later when I'm ready to get my hardware installed. If you opted to go with a normal GPU configuration, then there's an adjustable support bracket in the package that'll help keep your GPU nice and straight. With the enormous size and weight of today's GPUs, sagging has become a real issue, so this is a nice feature to see included with a case. This piece opens up options for fans or radiators in the front or top area of the case, something that's not possible and not included on the non-Pro model. You can fit 3 140 or 120 millimeter fans here, or radiators all the way up to 420 millimeters. I'm mounting it in the front, and to do that I need to loosen off the top post so that I can slide the bracket into place, and then there's just a few screws that attach it to the frame on the back. At the back, there's some cable tie-down points scattered throughout. There's some pass-through holes for cables, and it only has one with a rubber grommet. It's the one next to the motherboard power area. And there's a VESA mounting plate here so that you can get your build wall mounted if you want to. We have room for 2 3.5 inch or 3 2.5 inch drives right here. And then there's 2 plates that come with the case that allow you to attach 2 more drives in the recessed area to the right of the motherboard. And this area can also accept 3 fans up to 140 millimeters and radiators up to 420 millimeters. And the idea behind it being recessed is that it should keep the radiator away from your GPU and therefore maximizing compatibility. The maximum supported GPU length is 450 millimeters, but that drops down to 330 if you use this optional bracket and mount a big, tall reservoir for a custom water cooling loop. So for all you custom loop people, make sure you pay attention to that when you pick out your hardware if you're building in this case. Motherboard support ranges from ITX all the way up to eATX, but like I mentioned before, there's some limitations if you decide to go with a flat or vertical PSU mount. The I/O panel has a reset switch, headphone and mic ports, USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C, 2 USB 3.0 ports, a really big power button, and some power and activity LEDs. The glass side panel is 4.5 millimeters thick and it's tinted a bit. It attaches with 4 big, I guess you can call them thumb screws. They're integrated into the ends of each of the 4 corner posts. And there's a set of rubber washers that you're supposed to install on the panel before mounting it. But when I shot this part, I totally forgot about them. So it's not shown in the video here, but this is what they look like. They just pop into the holes in the glass, like super easy. Now this is what it looks like fully assembled and ready for hardware. This is how I wish it came out of the box so we didn't have to go through and do all that work, but hey, it is what it is. Since I've been using the original non-Pro Core P3 for a long time now, I just went ahead and made the preemptive decision to move my main build over to this new one. I filmed the build process and edited it down into a nice clean montage so that you can check that out and see how it went without having to sit here all day. For the most part, I think Thermaltake made a lot of really good, usable improvements with this new model. I like the recessed area for the radiator, the new base design with the little hooks for the side panel. Even if they are a little ugly, they're still nice to have. And the optional piece that expands the cooling options at the front or up top. It's all good stuff. But there are some downsides. For starters, it can be a pretty big pain to route cables, especially if you have a lot of them. This is a 200mm power supply, and it really doesn't leave a lot of open space on the main cable pass-through. During the build, I even tried going through the space under the radiator with some of the cables and getting around to the back that way to try and reduce how many of them I had to put through the main pass-through. But the cables just weren't long enough to reach where they needed to go. So unless you're using extension cables, you're probably going to be stuck using those 2 little pass-throughs sitting right next to the PSU. Also, being an open air design, there is 0 sound dampening, nothing whatsoever. So when you get the radiator, the fans, the pump, the GPU all running and fired up, this thing gets loud, and there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing other than maybe making some custom fan curves or manually dropping those fan speeds if you want to do that. But the problem is that reduces cooling, so there's a bit of a trade-off there. And while they did add a USB Type-C port to the front panel, they removed 2 standard USB Type-A ports that were there on the non-Pro model, something that I used regularly. So as someone that uses a lot of USB ports, I'm not really all that excited about that. If those few shortcomings aren't deal breakers for you, then I say go for it. This case is one of the best looking on the market, and it's very versatile in terms of cooling, whether you're into custom loops or if you just want to stick with AIOs. Either way, it's got you covered. MSRP is $160, and you can get it in black or white snow edition like I have here. I think this one's gonna be on my desk for a long time, just like the original was. Alright guys, thanks for watching, give the video a thumbs up, and get subscribed if you're not already, and we'll see you soon.